to change the fluid inside your differential is not a hard job. Alright, so to do this, on the back of any rear-wheel drive car is going to be something like this, but this one is a Camaro, and this is a 10-bolt rear end. One of the easiest ways to drain out the fluid is to undo the bolts all the way up to here, somewhere close to the top. You could even choose to do all the way up to the top bolt. The reason you wouldn't want to pull the whole thing off is because there's a bigger chance of fluid gushing out. So what happens if you just go up close to the top is that you can actually pull this back a little bit, so that will separate the cover from the differential, and basically you'll have a little opening right here where you're seeing orange where fluid can run out but not spill out completely. So once it's done draining, you can take off the rest of the bolts and get to work. So if you have a Camaro, you'll notice that this bar, this is your rear sway bar, is kind of in the way of getting to these bolts. It's hard to put a wrench on them. So about 2 years ago, my car had not been lowered yet, and it was a little bit easier. But now that it's been dropped about an inch, this bar is now completely in the way of those bolts. Easy fix though, if this is a situation that you have as well. So on a live rear axle car, you have these shackles that go over the top of the axle, and you have a bushing, and basically there's just a screw here and one in the back, and you'll find these on either side of the axle. And this is extremely easy to undo, and they're not under pressure, they're not tension, so you don't have to worry about things springing and hitting you in the face, anything like that. The only thing I'd say is if you live somewhere where it's rusty, they might be a little bit difficult to get off. I have been in the South for a long time, and we don't see too much rust, despite what it looks like up here. The bolts are almost never seized, and I don't need penetrating lubricant or anything. Okay, so enough there. When you take this off and the fluid is drained out, you'll take this back cap off and clean it off as best as you can with something like brake cleaner. Solvent works best. It sucks for the environment, and I always feel guilty about using it, but it does the job better than anything else, and you're going to want a clean seal, especially along here, because the back side of this is where your new gasket is going to go. If you have bits of gasket or sealant, which is going to be rubbery material, you're going to want to clean that off too, because you're not going to get a good seal unless both sides are down to as close to bare metal as you can get. Alright, so this is actually after I've done the whole job and rebolted everything up. And so what you're seeing right here, this reddish orange, is RTV sealant, which is room temperature vulcanized rubber. Comes out as a liquid. You don't have to put it over top of the gasket, but in my experience you get a better result that way. So that means I've taken everything off, drained the fluid, cleaned everything up, reapplied the gasket and the sealer, put it on here, bolted it up, and let it sit overnight. You don't have to do that, but it is a good idea to wait at least a few hours before you pour more fluid in. Basically, it's going to cure better if it is relatively dry inside as compared to if there was liquid in here already messing with the seal that isn't totally set up. Does that make sense? Okay, so what I'm down here going to do today is actually fill this back up. You're going to look for something like this, and if you have a Camaro, this is over on the right side of the car, so if you're underneath it laying upside down, that'll be your left. But basically you can just take a ratchet like this. You'll have to find the correct drive to go in there, right? But without putting a ratchet on the end of it or a socket on the end of it, you can actually put this in here, right? And that will allow you to unscrew that, right? So that's where we are, or at least where I am in the process. When you take that out, you're going to actually fill it with fluid. A Camaro is like 1.75 quarts, something like that, but I'm not going to measure. I fill it up until I can feel right at this lip the fluid, right? So it should come all the way up to here, and you don't need to go any more full than that. If you tried, it actually would just come back out. So this is a metal on metal surface, so when I put this back in, I'm going to put a little bit of sealant around it, tighten it just till it's snug but not over tight, kind of the same way you would do the bolt for an oil filter or anything like that, over tightening is a bad thing. So I'm going to work to avoid that. I don't know the torque spec on it, and I don't think my torque wrench would fit in here anyway. If you wanted to know the torque spec for these on a Camaro, it's 22 foot-pounds, so that's what I did in as close to a star pattern as possible. And once you finish, go back and tighten it in that same star pattern again, and you'll make sure that everything's snugged up and you're unlikely to get a leak again. So that's everything I can think to tell you. If you have questions, just ask and I'll try to get back to you. Not a hard job, as I mentioned, just potential for frustrations if you don't know how to move these or end up spilling over the concrete. So there isn't really a good way that I'm aware of to put differential fluid into this car. I have this, which looks like it would work a little bit better than it actually does. It has a valve in here, so you can invert it without it immediately spilling out. And the idea is that the end of it goes into the fill plug. The problem is it's very difficult to get this bottle higher than that hole, which means you have to apply pressure to the bottle to get it to work. And that's okay until the bottle starts to get empty, and then it's a challenge. In this car it is possible to sort of invert it above the axle if you can fit it through that space, but it tends to make a mess more often than not. So if you've got a tip or something that works for you, that's actually something that I would like to know, so leave it in the comments, whatever you need. And I should say, this car does not have a limited slip differential, so I don't have to add anything other than the fluid. I don't think it would hurt at all if I did, but it's just an extra cost. And since this isn't a race car, I also didn't go with any fluid that's exceedingly expensive, right? I didn't buy the $6 stuff. I also didn't buy the $25 stuff. So do what's right for your car, but that's kind of how I made the distinction for my own purposes. So good luck, and yeah, bye for now.